Now you structure the book around that trip. Did you say how long it was?
That was 8 days, 7 nights.
8 days and 7 nights, sharing a bunk with four people, and hauling in fish constantly. It felt like. So give us the flavor. You were not a journalist only on that trip. You were a working member of that team. Talk about what happens when the derrick on the boat, the crane, pulls up a net load of fish, and what happens to those fish from that moment going forward.
Okay, so there's a phrase that fishermen say, which is keep the gear wet, never miss a toe. So there's this sense in fishing that when you're a trawler, you're the derricks, which is sort of almost like big cranes, and they underneath them the nets travel, and they travel right along the bottom of the sea, so they're really pulling up kind of any fish that's there, and they get stuck inside the net. So anytime the trawler is in motion, those nets are scraping along, and then at the moment, so after about 3 hours when they've been down, they're pulled up and kind of hoisted onto the deck. And then the fishermen on this boat, every boat has its own idiosyncrasies, and some of them are more modern than others. But on the Philadelphia, you had to get inside the net pretty much and open up the cod end, which is the net that holds the net in place.
Sorry, the cod end, right?
The cod end, which is the rope that holds the net in place, closed. And then once that opens, all these fish cascade on top of the fishermen and then down onto the deck. And then the fishermen get out big buckets for each species of fish, and they spend about 30 minutes on their knees tossing fish into the particular baskets, throwing small sharks back into the sea, and any fish that they don't have quota for, meaning that they're not allowed to catch, or that there isn't a market for anyway. So then once the fish are all collected up, they're pulled to the back of the deck. And this process is happening on a very slippery deck where in bigger waves, you're sliding from one side to the other. And then you gut the fish at that moment. So there's this long silver table, kind of like an operating table. And each person has their knife, and they go through each of the different types of fish and they pull out the guts from them. Part of what I find so useful about having come to write a book from trying to be an anthropologist first was that I'd learned things about things like phenomenology. So this idea that by practicing, by actually being an active participant with the thing you're trying to learn about, you're going to have so much of a better understanding than if you're just passively observing. Sure. Plus also the other side of things was wanting to prove my worth, wanting not to just be a passenger on this boat, but wanting to help. And also I'd have been bored if I didn't do this. So I said immediately, got my boots on and my oilskins and said, can I help as well? And I was given a very small, very blunt knife, which I think was a sign of them recognizing in me perhaps a very clumsy, chaotic looking person. And I was slowly taught over the week how to gut each type of fish. And I have in my diary all these little hand-drawn notes of where to make the incision on different kinds of fish and how to kind of bleed them out in different ways. So we'd spend maybe an hour chatting away, laughing on the deck, pulling out these fish guts, chucking the fish then back into the boxes. Then we'd climb down into a really icy area in the belly of the boat called the fish room, where they have this massive hunk of ice that they would hack off each day. And you layer the fish in boxes with the ice. So by the end of the week, this once empty room suddenly has all these skyscrapers of fish in boxes. And I'd always end up climbing on top of the different boxes and then managing to put the fish box on the top. So over the course of the week, that became a much more difficult task. But it was also quite extraordinary to see itemized how many fish we'd caught, seeing these sort of towers of fish.